Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Heltemes. Coming up next, vaping remains top news. MoCo Racial and Social Justice Act, Rockville Shouting Fest, plus uncovered stories. We're joined today by voices from all sides. Former school board member Jill Ortman-Fouse here for the first time today. Welcome. Laurie Halverson, president of the Chevy Chase Women's Republican Club. Elbridge James, past president of Progressive Maryland, and former Obama administration Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Joel Rubin. All of this and more. Stay tuned. This week, council members Gabe Albornoz and Craig Rice introduced legislation co-sponsored by all council members that will prohibit vape shops within a half a mile of public or private middle and high schools, and legislation that will prohibit e-cig manufacturers from distribution of them within a half mile of middle and high schools. Laurie, it's been reported that 19 of the 22 vape shops in the county fit this criteria and will be forced to move or perhaps close. Is this the correct direction for the county to take?
I think that's a horrible direction to take. It's just another thing they're doing to be against businesses, and there's two reasons why I think this. The first one is that legislation has already passed where you have to be 21 starting in October to purchase tobacco products and vaping products that have nicotine in them. The second reason is would be research. There's a lot of research out there that shows that tobacco products, smoking, is worse, much worse than vaping. So what are you going to do with all the shops that sell tobacco products? I don't think you could close some of these shops when you have tobacco shops still open.
Okay, well, today it was announced that Walmart is going to stop selling vaping products, and that's like the biggest retailer, so that will make a difference. So, Jill, nationwide, hundreds of people are sick with illnesses related to vaping, and the current count is 8 dead. The smoking rate of school kids was around 6%, and it's now nearing 30%. With 5 million youth vapors with flavors like Cap'n Crunch and advertising geared to youth, young people are hooked. As a former school board member, should MCPS have done something sooner before this became a health nightmare?
I do believe they should have done something sooner. Our students started alerting us about this issue at least over a year ago. Our student board member said that all of the bathrooms in his high school were often occupied by vaping, and that it was becoming more pervasive throughout the district. I have to give a shout out to student Lewis Schreiber, who is a Winston Churchill student who's worked on legislation himself because he didn't see the school system doing enough, and there were 3 students from Winston Churchill who went to the hospital because of the vaping devices.
Well, Elbridge, 1 e-cig pot equals a pack of cigarettes, and anecdotally I've seen kids saying they smoke 3-4 a day. And some states have now banned flavored cigarettes, but they're still continuing menthol and mint. It's the e-cigs. India has banned all e-cigs, and China has halted the e-trade of the Juul products. This is a unique health crisis for our country. Should Congress just snuff this out now?
All forms of government should take proactive action to, in fact, protect our public and our youth. The problem I have is that, in fact, like with alcohol, we've tried to move and protect children. We should do the same with all these e-cigarettes and all these vaping utensils. Congress should do it, but Center for Disease Control and Tobacco Firearms, all departments should jump in on this, because it is a problem that is affecting our youth more than our adult population.
But I think the number I heard was 72% of the people who are sick are men. And the problem with e-cigarettes is that the youth brain, mine maybe isn't there yet, but you don't really have your brain formulated until you're 25. And this is really making a difference. And these kids who vape 3 and 4 pods a day thinking, ooh, it's Cap'n Crunch, isn't this grand?
Yeah, well, many of the kids are getting this in the black market. So if you keep these stores, if you close these stores, they're going to continue getting getting them in the black market, and that's going to be more likely where they're going to get
Well, they say the
disease from
same
that.
thing about alcohol, and when in fact we've seen that alcohol has now been regulated and moved into a proper environment for those of us that drink.
In fact, Lewis has his legislation he's targeting that he wanted the county council to pass, but it's actually more appropriate for the state because the legal process is specifically around the flavorings of the e-cigs, because that does target youth, and that's something that he's been pointing out for months.
Yeah, and it's highly addictive, and also the kids are using it in a way where they go to class, they vape, they act as if they're doing nothing but looking at their books. These look like thumb drives
That's
in many
right.
instances.
Yes.
So this is out of control.
And
These
if
are highly
everyone
addictive. They
smells
need to
like
be reined
fruit,
in.
Right.
you should
Yeah,
probably say.
It's done to skirt the law. It's intended to get kids hooked in a way that they can't get hooked with nicotine in cigarettes now, and we better put a stop to it.
In one of our middle schools even, the teachers had banned having the hoodies in their classrooms because the students would pull the hoodie down and vape into their sleeves.
And do you know that there are now some hoodies that the little string that's here is actually a pod that you can smoke?
As a device.
Yes, as a device. So it's frightening,
Gotta get ahead of
and
this.
it is so, and even with just nicotine in it, if you do a whole pod, that's a whole pack of cigarettes. Kids just don't know what they're doing. So anyway, but let's move on. Last Friday, dueling rallies regarding immigration took place in Rockville, and President Trump spoke on Thursday night in Baltimore when he addressed the Republican House retreat. Trump stoked the flames of division. He touted his wall. He attacked the media, and he berated his Democratic presidential, the Democratic presidential candidates. So, Joel, Trump has targeted Baltimore and Congressman Cummings for months in what has been described by many as racially motivated speech. How should we in Maryland respond to this? And is the Rockville rally really a symptomatic of a broken system, maybe right here in Blue Maryland?
Well, President Trump clearly believes that if he can stoke racial disunity, he's going to get reelected. And what he's been doing time and again, including against other Congresswomen, Ilhan Omar, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, African-American members of Congress, is targeting them with hate-based speech to try to get people in his base out, because he knows he's not going to appeal to a broader electorate. So yes, here in Maryland, we should do more. We should stand up. The governor hides when these moments come up. When Baltimore was attacked, the governor took days to figure out how to respond. That's not leadership, that's failure. We need to stand up more aggressively.
Okay.
Well, they said there was a lot of hate-based speech at the Rockville rally. I was there, and you can watch the entire program of what was said on Breitbart, and nothing was racially. I mean, a lot of what's being said is not true, and I don't think that.
All I heard was Mr. Gorka. He's the only one I heard speak. So
Yeah, you can watch the entire program, and there were no, I would not call us alt-right people that were there. I mean, there were a lot of Republican people who I know who are very conservative, and they're very concerned about the safety of people.
So when the president calls our major city in the state rat-infested and attacks the member of Congress representing that, who's African-American.
What's not true about that?
Okay, we're going to
Okay.
cut it off right there. Jill, the rally focused on ICE and Executive Elbridge's actions regarding immigrant detainees. Elbridge and ICE officials had agreed at a meeting that they held to discuss these issues that it was productive. Is Elbridge doing the right thing when he's dealing with ICE and the immigrant detainees?
I do believe he's doing the right thing. He admitted that they did have a serious misstep in their procedure, but we are simply saying that we want to keep our community safe. We want to continue to be a welcoming community, and the way you keep a community safe is by making all of the residents feel comfortable in reaching out to the police when they need to report crimes, or if they want to work with the police on an investigation. And if they're worried about the police going after them about their immigration status, then they're less cooperative and less likely to report crimes, and then they're not cooperative. And you need to have that trust in the community.
And the process of if a person getting out of jail has a detainer, they've cleaned up the process so that they're
Yes.
not doing it on the street or something. They're doing it in the like the detention
And it was
center.
important to clarify that handover of responsibility, which he did.
Yes, so that should eliminate and alleviate a lot of problems, because there was concern that, other, people could be out there and the police could be in danger or whatever.
Right,
and-
but the policy is that when someone is arrested by our police, they do notify Homeland Security. ICE does get notified, the FBI get notified.
But
So
they
the
will
procedure
not,
is there.
there's a 48-hour period that they should be keeping them, and they will release them. If they have gone through the process, they will release them back into society when ICE has asked them to keep them there. So that's the problem,
But
and that's
they
what
do-
people were protesting.
Yes, and they get ample notice, but, they said,
Well, one of the concerns you have is the fact is that I can understand the 48 policy if we were in rural areas. We're in ICE's backyard. If they know I have someone, they should be able to have an appropriate time or get a time to come and get that person. So that 48-hour issue shouldn't be an issue.
Well, Elbridge, we're going to go on to a kind of connected topic. This week, Council President Nancy Navarro, with the support of all the council members and Executive Elbridge, introduced legislation with the goal of erasing racial inequity in the county. The law would establish a countywide racial equity and social justice program, and it would create a separate office of racial equity and social justice. Now, since you've been fighting for social justice all life, and I know that's your passion, can Navarro's legislation create a more equitable and just Montgomery County?
There's two parts of that. One is that you're codifying something that we should already be doing in terms of equality in the county. The other thing is that our offices should look at what we call cultural competency. In other words, everyone that works in the county. We did this with the teachers, and we're trying to do this now. We're looking at it with the police department, in fact, having cultural competency so you know who you're working with. You're trying to make them feel more comfortable, especially because we have individuals that come, international individuals and individuals that come from other cultures and backgrounds. Our employees, our public servants should get the best out of what their service that they're giving and get the best for the customer. There should be what I call a cultural competency, so I know what you're looking at and I can give you the most, and then you can get the most from me.
Well, Laurie, on Thursday, 200 people, that was just last night, we're taping Friday night, 200 people gathered in Rockville to discuss the goals of the law, and the legislation is going to require government agencies, just as you alluded to develop racial equity plans and impact statements for future agency programs, and Park and Planning has to also take into consideration these topics when developing future master plans. Now, is this legislation meaningful, or is this just more feel-good words on paper, Laurie?
Well, I went to one of the town hall meetings where the county council was meeting with people to discuss their plans, and I thought that was very good. I enjoyed the discussion, and I thought that having that discussion was a good step towards making improvements. However, I don't think it's something you can legislate. I mean, I look back in 1960, the county council passed the Human Relations Commission, and they worked on it way back then, and I'm not sure how much was accomplished then, and I feel like they're reinventing the wheel. I wonder what's happening with, like, when they create these plans, when all these departments are creating these plans, what are they going to look like? Is there will there be outcomes? Will they measure the outcomes?
That's the idea.
I'm just concerned that it's just very vague right now, and I just don't see
Well,
how
it hasn't passed yet.
Yeah.
That's once it's implemented.
But the idea that we can't actually raise our standards as a society and have our government be part of that is ridiculous. My daughters go to public school. I went to the back to school nights for each of them, and they are very open-minded in these schools, and they're bringing people in. They're using multilingual presentations, and it raises all of us. So that is a government action, a government effort. It doesn't just come out of nowhere, and I think we need to raise the bar for our society.
See, the point is that what they're trying to do doesn't take away from something.
It
Right.
only
adds to
enhances
the value.
Or it makes our
Right.
community very strong.
Exactly.
And we can only think positive that's going to make our county a better place.
Not only that, but to our students, especially our white students, when they know this world is multicultural and multiracial, it prepares them to be the best they can be.
Okay. Well, we're going to be right back after this short break. Stay tuned. And we're back. So the Maryland Public Interest Research Group, MPIRG, released a report this week that found that Montgomery County's public financing laws for elections served its purpose. 35 of the candidates running for county executive and council signed up for the program that encourages small donors with matching funds. 24 candidates qualified for matching funds, and County Executive Elbridge and District Council members Navarro and Katz won, and all 4 of the at-large candidates won. Jawando, Reimer, Glass, and Albernaz won using public financing. So Jill, you ran for the council last year. What do you think about this law?
I definitely agreed with the public financing. I did meet the matching amount. In fact, I met it faster than any of the other candidates that were running. So I completely agree with it. The problem was that we still had the top 10 people who were financed, who raised the most money, were still men. So even though we had the public financing, the groups that endorse were still looking at men as the most likely to win.
And not one woman and one at large.
That's right, and not putting their money in their endorsement in an equitable way.
So Laurie, Howard County is now developing their own legislation for public financing, and all the winners in Montgomery County were Democrats. Can public financing help elect more Republicans in the state?
You know, it's just so frustrating that for a Republican to win, it would take a lot. And I don't think the Democrats would have passed this public financing law if they thought the Republicans could win. I saw Ed Amatetti run a really great race. He worked his behind off, knocking on so many doors. I don't think Craig Rice knocked on even a fourth of the doors that he did, and it didn't help him. And so I don't know what else it's going to take, but I think public financing in general, though, is a good thing for everybody.
Craig Rice is an incumbent. Progressive
Yes.
Maryland championed this bill 10, 15 years ago. I spent a lot of sweat equity in the council and down in Annapolis fighting for public financing. We, in fact, as the African American community, we desperately need public financing to have equality. So I think women will catch up.
They better. And we better.
Women
Okay.
will catch up.
We better.
better.
Okay,
It's
before
true.
I die at least. A Maryland story has been slowly building regarding a Maryland paying 5 wrongly incarcerated men who served a combined 120 years in jail. The state's not made such payments in over 15 years. State Treasurer Nancy Kopp and State Comptroller Peter Francho have used the Board of Public Works to rally this cause. But Governor Hogan has held fast in opposing as he argues process. This week, Hogan appears to have changed his mind after receiving intense pressure from the legislature and elsewhere. So, Elbridge, what does this mean for these 5 gentlemen, and what does it mean for the state of Maryland?
The state of Maryland's going to pay these gentlemen. To be proactive, the state needs to come up with a formula for these 5 gentlemen, but only for this time period. And the reason why I say that, cost of living, depending how long they've stayed in jail, other circumstances will depend on what you, in fact, shall we say, I will say the state punishment, but how much these folks have suffered. And so they need to turn around. We need to get this right quick. If you put it in the hands of the lawyers, we're going to pay triple the cost. And I'm looking at you. The state needs to come up. These are our, as taxpayers, these are our revenues, and we're saying these gentlemen have been punished
and
enough.
as if I recall, that 4 are African American and 1 white man, correct?
Don't know.
I think they.
And if I could add, though, I think this also, the state needs to pay as a deterrence effect to make
Correct.
sure we get it right in the future. Deterrence can work both ways, right? It's not the
Yes.
criminal justice system as
Yes.
an idealized version. The state needs to make sure that it's prosecuting properly, and part of that is paying for past failures.
Yeah, I think there could be more of this with DNA testing and everything else, but these gentlemen suffered long enough, I think, and it's time. And we'd all agree on that, I think, right?
Well, I do think that something. Why did the Senate not pass something? The delegates passed it, and then it failed in the Senate. So some of the blame goes to them because.
Yeah,
Yes.
but we don't know.
Yes.
Yes, and maybe this will get them to finish it up. As we know, not everything passes in the first year. So now, Joel, To pay for his wall, President Trump has diverted Defense Department funds to pay for the construction. So DoD schools, money to allies, and even a daycare facility at Andrews Air Force Base was cut. Congressman Brown and Senator Cardin have cried foul over this, and this week the Pentagon asked Congress to restore all the cut funds because they're hurting. So as Marylanders, should we be outraged as this cut to Andrews Air Force Base daycare, or is this really irrelevant to us in Montgomery County?
So there's a great word in Yiddish for this. It's called chutzpah. And the president has a lot of chutzpah. This is the great lie of his presidency, coming out down the escalator saying, I'm going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. That was his argument. Mexico's not paying for it. You're paying for it. I'm paying for it. We're all paying for it. So the projects that we've lost here in the state of Maryland, and it's $3.2 billion globally, the projects that we've lost, we're paying for, but we're now paying for fences. And it's important to understand what he's getting for robbing the Pentagon budget. He's getting 170 miles of fences, of which only a third are new, not even a wall. And to add to that, of course, the insult that the administration expects Congress to now backfill and pay for the projects it didn't want to pay for. The whole thing is completely a blatant misrepresentation of how government should work.
Well, and what's ironic about Andrews Air Force Base is because the president flies in and out of Andrews all the time. And the reason, and I use the word cry foul.
Before Scotland and his hotels.
Yeah,
right?
but what's happening there is in the daycare, the sewage keeps flowing up.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is abysmal.
Now, these are real projects. They're real need. The MilCon budget is separate from the defense budget if you're a budget weenie, and I did that on Capitol Hill for a number of years. MilCon is MilCon, and they rated that budget, which is for long-term priorities to protect our
And
people.
I can think of some projects at MCPS that could also use some help. So.
Okay.
No, just in our own county.
And now with parting shots, I'd like to start by making a comment about a comment made last week about rape kits, because in all the conversation about rapes in Montgomery County, the thought was that we need to test the rape kits that are locked up in a room somewhere in Baltimore. This is what we need to do. The state legislature can't add money to the budget, but they can fence off money. They fenced off this last year $3.5 million for testing rape kits. It was a list of 11 or 12 items the governor said he would find money for, and he hasn't done it. And the legislature is frustrated. So everybody, call Governor Hogan's office this weekend, say, keep your promise, spend that $3.5 million on rape test kits. Now we begin. Jill, your first parting shots.
I'm very proud of our students and MCPS students who showed up on Capitol Hill today for the climate strike. They were responsible, they were very organized, they were very prepared. I heard them interviewed for different media outlets that were there. They had articulate messages, and they have a strategy that they're trying to implement with our school system and with the county to create more responsibility around climate change. So I couldn't be more proud of them today.
Laurie, you're up next.
Yes, I want to commend the people who came out who were conservatives last week to the rally in front of the steps of the county council building. A lot of mischaracterizations were made, and I want to make it clear that we were not an anti-immigration group. Maryland Matters and a number of other media have said that we were anti-immigrant. We were against immigration, and that we were not. We were for legal immigration.
Okay, you guys have 20 seconds each, so you got to go fast. Elbridge, what's yours?
I'd like to applaud the gun manufacturers and the retailers who stop selling AK arms. They're not needed in this country. They're not good for hunting. You know, they kill us. I applaud them for stopping the sale.
And Colt's not making them anymore as of this week. Yes, Joel.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to keep on reminding the people out there that we have a lawless president who now it looks like he was trying to coordinate with a foreign government to attack a potential opponent for president. That is illegal, that can't be stood for, and fortunately we have members of Congress right now from Maryland who are fighting to move towards impeachment because that needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. And I just did want to add that Colt this week announced they're not making any more of the those weapons for civilian use, only for the military. So Jill, thanks again for being here. I hope you come back soon. And thank you to all of the panel and our crew for being here each week. And thank you for joining us on Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show, 21 This Week. And be sure to follow on social media. See you next time. And I'm Susan Heltemes. Bye for now.